question is everyone holding their fair share? Meaning, are other districts having their fair share of them? Like, we're not saying people should not be housed.
For sure.
We're just saying the CB1 doesn't need to house all of them. I think they were saying one of the CBs ain't got nobody there. I think it's like 9 or 10.
Let's see.
CB 9 or 10 doesn't have like has
11.
like 2 or 3 shelters.
So CD 11,
Oh, it's 11.
they have none.
Okay.
That's Morris Park, Bronx River. We
What-
just looked it up.
Down on this map so we can all see it. Is that what?
Yeah, is that what you're looking
You
at?
should scroll up.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
We're
Yeah,
not in the
there it
Bronx.
is.
Oh, sorry.
So if you make it bigger, CD 11 is Morris Park, Bronx River.
Am I going in the right
Is
direction?
that because?
Oh, yeah. Here you go.
I'm wondering if that's because isn't there a park there, like a giant?
Pelham?
Yeah, isn't that where Fulham Park is?
I was going to ask, where's Riverdale? Isn't that the fancy
8.
part?
Riverdale
8.
is number 8, yeah.
Oh, and they have one.
They have one. So
Okay.
But I also there's this piece about like transportation, getting people close to where there are means for them to be able to access jobs and services and things like that. And so these areas that there are more concentrated people like Bronx 4, that's where the hub is, right? Or Bronx 1 and Bronx 4 have more transportation hubs than the rest
Like, where's
of the
Fordham
hubs.
Drive? What's that one?
Fordham is
Fordham
probably
Road.
like 20, number 5.
Oh, so the second high. Okay, so now it
Yeah,
makes
because
sense.
the Heights is
So I
5.
guess it's not I agree with the rest of what you said here today, but there's also a bit of
Transportation.
How do we get people access to the rest of the city? Because the farther north you get in the Bronx, the
Yeah,
more
no
difficult it is.
Yeah, no transportation.
So
These are good factors. Things we didn't think about. I didn't think about at least.
based on this letter from Mock J, they're proposing to contract. That's what's in the first line, right?
Right. Well, so it is our understanding now from the presentation we got from Fortune Society, going back to the Health and Human Services meeting earlier this month, that they have been selected for this contract. This letter is informed us in the late fashion that they are proposing. So the language about that the Mock J letter is late in theory, but it is written in a more we proposing to have this project in your district. Does that make sense?
Oh, we don't have that letter.
That was given to Health and Human Services. That's the Health
Oh.
and Human Services. When Fortune Society did that presentation, that's the Mock J letter.
Now, is this part of Close Rikers, this site?
No.
This is an independent, because Close Rikers comes with
Transitional places.
it comes with transitional housing, and it comes with one site for women. So Close Rikers comes with 2 buildings attached to the jail. One right on the same block, which is supposed to be transitional, and then one where that elementary school is. What's her name? Fannie Lou.
Oh.
Right? That's the name of the school on 139th. So behind Fannie Lou, that parking lot that the school uses now, that's going to be a second site for Mock J.
So no, this one they seem to get Mock J funds, but it's going to be on like 149, right?
This is one.
So it's 149th, yeah.
Wells Avenue. So it's my understanding that this is something that is not part of the Close Rikers campaign.
So I'm bringing that up because that means that within the next 3 years, we're going to have 2 more.
Yeah. We asked them how long their contract was. You know how some like private leases are 10 years or things of that nature. They didn't have any lease agreement. They say whenever the money runs out. So that doesn't make sense to me, but whatever.
Yeah, because Mock J is probably only funding this for.
It has to be
So I mean, based on like the reality at Rikers right now is like 1 in, I think every 4 people that are on Rikers right now cannot be released because they don't have a home to go to. So in order to close down the buildings that need to be demolished, we have to get people into transitional housing. But I think the question you're asking us is, what policy do we need to develop for how these things are done,
Yeah,
so that they don't just show up in the district.
exactly. I think sometimes when the big group is here, it's harder to have these like conversations and nuances. So, for example, I wasn't fully cognizant of the fact that certain districts, like community board districts in the Bronx, don't have no public transportation, right? Transitional person, even that, let's use Fortune said, they do a lot of programming. So that means those are people who need to get, they need to leave every day and go do something, whatever that is, therapy, screening, finding a job, applying for programs. They need to leave every day and try to re-enter into society.
But that's
So-
not the case for CD11 is like all trains and buses. That's Pelham.
Okay, so then that's a
So
different
they have
conversation.
transportation.
So that's a different conversation. So the question is, if we know CD11 has public transportation, at least some portion of it has public transportation, then the question is, why isn't it going into CD11? We did ask Fortune, just to give like a specific like case example, why did they consider this location in 149 Wales? And they stated that, I don't know if word on the street was that they were looking for a place, but someone had a place and offered it to them. That's what they
So
said.
someone had a site.
Yeah, someone had a site and offered. We asked the question, did you consider any other sites? They never answered that. So
Well, it seemed like they wouldn't have, right?
Yeah.
Like that would, like until they had a new facility that they had no plans of expansion.
exactly. They do have places in northern Bronx. They have places outside of our districts as well.
Where are you reading the proposal?
I don't know where it is. Where is that? I don't have.
You want a copy of the
This
letter
thing?
for it was shared.
Yeah, this was from the last
So this
meeting.
letter was shared as part of Mock J's, the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice, to form the community board of creating this specific facility on Wells Avenue. Ms. Williams and others may have this letter because it was shared at the Health and Human Services Committee when Fortune Society came to present. And I don't remember the particulars, but it's talking about the sizes and what the services they provide, what's the staffing ratio to residents, and and how long folks will be there. And so that is all.
Yeah, so it's like 6 to 12 months is expected. And
There's
I don't see anything about veterans in that letter,
I don't know why is 11 gray.
because gray, according to the color code, it means that there's nothing there, that there's no shelters in that area. So CD11 is the only place in the Bronx where they don't have any. But CD11 is Pelham Park, and they're not going to take it down Lane, right? So I think the goal for the meeting then for us to develop
yes,
guidance on like how they need to step into our community.
Twofold. One, how they need to step. We want a lot of we talked about like policy. So when someone is making a presentation, what we want to know, what we want to ask, even if it's by right, they do listen to us, right? So Fortune is coming by right, but we did ask about jobs. I think there's 127. They said they're going to do a job fair with us. I shared with Ramona earlier, they're going to have a community advisory board. Unclear how much teeth the advisory board's going to have, but it is a place to talk about any issues we feel like is coming from inside the building and impacting the neighborhood. And we asked that, can we have at least 2 people from the community board sitting on that community advisory? They stated yes. So there were some asks that were done. And if we have like a protocol, then when people come, we can do that. But secondfold, we can always write letters of advocacy to talk about why are we holding so many, and CD11 has public transportation and they don't have any.
Because their board is, are we live on YouTube? It's because their board has been able to more strategically negotiate on behalf of their constituency.
So I really want to
like how I put that?
Yes, amazing.
I want to give you the gold star.
So I mean, if that's the case, we want to, we want this committee to be an advocacy arm for the entire board as well. So if that's the case, so the question is twofold. One is advocacy, and then 2 is like protocol and procedures, as if we know more are coming in.
So I mean, I think we have to start with the fair share policy, right? Because the city has a fair share policy. So fair share policy on, what is it, assisted living?
I don't understand. Let me
And
click the link.
So I just provided a letter.
Oh, I gave it to everybody. You guys all have it?
Everybody, it's something that was sent by my colleagues and she was sent.
No, you don't have it.
You should have it from Rafael Moya. And it
Here it
says
is.
that they've written to the commissioner, and there was another letter that I was going to ask the chair if consent to have the board, this committee consider. As part of New York City citywide statement of needs, Bronx CB6 has issued the attached letter to the commissioner. The letter addresses DHS lack of shelter siting policy, so fair share and citing about how we determine how shelters end up in certain areas in the district. Um, the letter addresses DHS lack of that, which is considering concentrating shelters only in low-income communities. And so because again, if you look at in certain communities where it points out to the chair's piece when you look at the map, certain communities that are considered well to do off type of communities have less or no shelters in those communities. And this letter, that was written by the district manager, the chair of that particular board, speaks to that because each year we as a community board puts together district needs and a citywide needs statement and to determine that we in our community board do not need any we don't our shelter sightings do not match the homeless population coming out of our district, meaning that more people are not being evicted from community board one to match the large amount of shelters that have been placed in our district. And so we were writing a letter to speak to that particular issue. And I shared it with the board and wanted it to be considered. So I know we're jumping around from issue to issue to issue, but I wanted to also have that the chair's consent as something we.
So Community Board 6 is saying that DHS proposes a new transitional shelter facilities, and then DHA's proposal indicates the need for an open-ended request for proposals to address the needs for shelter in New York City. So then we need to be looking at the fair share.
Yeah, the fair share policy, which regardless of what we feel about it, does exist.
When
It's
was
adopted
this?
in 1990. And it's just this idea that everybody in the city is supposed to have their fair share. Now, again, it doesn't have any teeth.
So then I think the call is to find within the fair share policy, within this document that they created, what are the steps, right? Or like what was the framework that was built into fair share that is not being upheld, right?
The chair, if you look at the screen, the fair share highlights it in an article that is.
Here's the letter.
I gave it to her. She has a copy.
Oh,
An article that it has unfortunately.
You done with this one?
I mean, okay, so let's just, one, this is dated when? Oh, April, this one's dated soon. So they just want us to sign off on this.
No. I'm asking if this committee wants to adopt a similar letter that we will also share with the Department of Homeland Services to the commissioner, asking them to speak to this issue.
Yes. And I do want to say the meeting they had, this article 5 and 6 had, DHS didn't even show up to their meeting. I mean, that's last year, but DHS did not even show up to their meeting in June. So yeah, we can write something similar to this, and we'll just cite fair share. Who cares if it's a teeth? At least it's a real citywide document.
So to go back, Ramona, you're asking what are the steps the city? What is the step under the document the city uses to determine what is quote unquote fair share and how it is depicted, or how it's used in different parts of the borough and the city? Is that what you're asking? Does that document outline how it happens?
so it's saying like to encourage early consultation with communities, a companion provision in this charter, section 204 requires the city to publish an annual citywide statement of needs.
Oh, what did you click? You clicked I clicked the hyperlink of the article?
I came to the fair share. I Googled straight up fair share in New York City shelters. Fair share policy on assisted living and supportive. So it seems like the city back in 89 thought that the first step was to have the city actually issue a statement of needs. Is the city still doing that?
And so that is what is pointed out in the letter that was sent by my colleague in Community Board 6. The city is not.
No, it's here.
That is for all city
Not using
services.
it. It's supposed to, but he's arguing that it's not doing it.
Well, Brad Lander also says they're not doing it. This is November 2023. New York City fails to comply with fair share requirements. Audits and analysis by Comptroller Lander.
So the city's supposed to use the city.
So it's supposed to publish the citywide statement of needs for fiscal years. So that's been published, right? So the city has been doing that. That's the first step. Then the community boards are giving an opportunity to comment on the statement, and the borough presidents may propose sites in the boroughs for needed facilities. That's what's not happening.
Exactly.
Okay, so then what we need to focus on is based on you starting a Google Doc, or like how do you want to do this?
Google Doc.
So
I'm
I
going to
think,
add you to a Google Doc. I'm going to create a new Google Doc.
yeah, we probably need like a Google Drive for like every.
Yeah, I put everything on my Google Drive.
Yeah, like we need a Google Drive for like the committees that are like owned by the.
So we do, but each committee does have a Google Drive where for that's
name
by
it.
the communications tech committee that drops in documents and information.
Oh, for real? I didn't know
Easily
that.
accessible. Yeah. So,
Well, she didn't tell
you
me.
use yours for you use those because the folks are working on the bylaws, the documents, and everything else. So that's what you have on for yours. But there is one that we drop in flyers or different things that are for communications and tech, not for policy stuff.
So I was like, I read a lot. DHS. Okay, fair share. Let's call this fair share.
Yeah, so like CB1 fair share guidance
Okay.
or something.
Okay, CB1 fair share. We're gonna call it advocacy because that's what fair share
Yeah.
falls under. Advocacy. Ooh, child. Every time I'm not on my Mac, I feel retarded. Okay.
So I think like what we need to look into, right, is like
share. Hold on, let me share this with you. Okay.
no, not with me.
Well, I want you to cut and paste the thing you're looking at on there so I can see it.
Not with me.
I'm gonna share with everybody, but
See, so it's supposed to basically be like the issue a citywide statement of needs, describing the facilities the city plans to site.
what are you looking at? Can you share it with me?
Yeah, I'm gonna drop it in the document. You shared it with me?
Yeah, it's right there. You on there. You should see it.
So let me go into my email.
Okay.
Here we go. So yeah, the city issues the statement saying this is what we need for the city, and then the borough presidents and the community boards are supposed to look at that list, and then the borough president identifies a site. So
Well, when's the last time that happened?
So the citywide statement is getting published. I didn't even know that it was, but it is. They even have 25, 26 up already. Then I like to see things in a list when I'm trying to find the weaknesses. And then to inform the public, the statement of needs must be accompanied by a map and list of city-owned and leased properties. So these are the current steps to uphold fair share. Then let me put the link to the fair share documents in here so y'all can take a gander. So it seems to me like the city is issuing a statement of needs.
Step one is check.
But as of right is what Fortune Society is claiming for this one, right?
Yes, they did.
So this is for just standard. So then let me look for as of right inside the document.
Because I wonder, even as of right, I just feel like there has to be something to like trump that. Like in a perfect world, you get something as of right, but if I made up the law, this district already has 30, so you do get it as of right, but you have to wait for something to open up in CB 11, for example, or CB. There's one that only has one. Wherever Riverdale only has one.
Yeah.
Obviously, we want to take into consideration for like when we talk about CHOW or other advocacy groups for our unhoused population, we want to take it back, like take into fact transportation, things of that nature, right? We can't put somebody in the middle of bumblefuck. So that part, but like if we can locate someplace with low concentration and public transportation, subway, I know there's buses everywhere, but subway, then that would be like, that is how like you would have it as right as long as these other elements are made
I think we also need to look at like the other factors towards recidivism. So it's like the person needs to be returning home. That's one of the most positive indicators. So this site is going to be like 66 beds.
Yeah, Fortune did tell us they cannot guarantee that everyone who's going
No,
to
it's
be
it's 6 rooms. I think it's a little over
2 beds per room.
2 beds, over 100 plus more beds. If you look at page 2, I think it speaks more about what the
I should brought my notes.
So 168 beds, right?
right.
Yeah.
So I think that this is another place where like we can be like, if you don't have 168 Mott Haven tenants, then you don't need 168 beds coming in, right? So like, how do you make?
They said we couldn't.
I'm
do that.
working my way like backwards, right? Like if there are 168 beds proposed, then you have to be able to demonstrate to me, Mock J, that there are 168 individuals in Rikers right now that from Mott Haven that would benefit from these beds.
See, that's
And
where,
that's a lift that's heavy,
That's
and
right.
we're trying to create obstacles in heavy lifts, right? So like one of the things that we need to explore is like in our recommended like requirements or like whatever the hell you want to call it,
Mhm.
is MOCJ or lead city agency has to demonstrate that the beds proposed would be or are needed, not would be, are needed
in the community.
to accommodate folks from Community Board 1. So like to accommodate returning folks from CB1.
And this is what the district manager was saying, is that there's more shelters than there are homeless people
Yeah.
coming from this district.
People need to go back to their community when they become homeless or when they are released. They don't need to come back to our community. Because the reason why like transit and all of that other shit becomes, all of that other stuff becomes a factor is because you need to have them navigating. But if you know your community, you're navigating your community very differently from like someone from like Staten Island where they have none should not be placed in the hub regardless of how many buses and trains the hub has.
I do want to also tell you something that Jamal Bowman, the congressional, the one that's up north, he has this whole program that is about getting children, because we have a lot of family shelters in Northern Bronx, to school, because even though your shelter is in the Bronx, you get to keep your homeschool if you want.
Yeah.
And so there's this huge issue, you can imagine.
Which is why you should be in a family shelter in your home district, not in Jamal Bowman's district.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Like you're putting them in Jamal's district, but they're from Staten Island. And then it's the taxpayer's responsibility to get the child to Staten Island every day.
Which is crazy.
So what other obstacles do we want to create in the process? Do you know as of right? Do you know that law like really well?
Yeah, what does that mean as of right? I don't even understand it.
Like I took you, like Columbus.
Yeah.
So as of right, is my understanding, and this is very loose, is that where there doesn't have to be city planning, you will process to be able to be voted on in order for it to happen. So this is a private landlord that offers the space, and you're not using city property to determine to make the determination. So before the city's property is dispersed or dispensed, I don't know which word is correct, but it is that it takes a vote from the community board to the community board to city planning, and city planning to city council to happen. That is not as of right. But if you're using private property, like this, like a particular project we're talking about, a Fortune Society is using, that is not as of right, and the city is funding it. Now, it was usually a policy of the city that before a project is funded, the city agency would consult with the community board whether or not we favorably want to fund this project. Is not under this. It is my understanding under this particular administration that is not a policy that for funding we require.
So the problem here is the mayor.
So let's be clear. So that means even though it's city dollars, because the city dollar is going to a private landlord, is as of right. That's like in like big umbrella. There might be some details we're missing, whatever.
Right. So
Yeah.
as of right, when you're not using city-owned property or you're not dispensing city-owned property.
So as of right, an as of right development complies with all applicable zoning regulations and does not require any discretionary action by the city planning commission or board of standards and appeals.
So Mach J doesn't fall under that, I guess.
So an entity
That's
that
what
is
the
using
chips are.
private land
Right.
that is able that and it currently complies with all current zoning and
Okay.
has no need to change any of the zoning requirements.
Which should
Does
be
not
city
have to go
planning.
through the other standards of processing to get approval, discretionary approval from the board.
So that makes sense because this building that Mach J Fortune is taking was already like an apartment or something they explained to us. So there's like kitchen.
Privately owned.
Yeah, it was privately owned and already like created for housing purposes.
And that's what's happening a lot with, to add to what Ms. Williams is saying, it's happening a lot where all this housing is likely being developed, luxury or low income, where they're not able to lease up these properties fast enough. And then with city dollars not used to create this affordable or luxury housing, that they are usually turning it over to shelters, traditional housing, etc. So it's happening with our hotels.
I was gonna say that there's a huge hotel issue where the hotels come and then the beds are empty, and then the city uses them as shelters. And now that I understand as of right, it's already zoned for housing people. It's private company, and therefore they can just use it without getting permission. Now, in our make believe, we get to do anything we want in this requirement. It would be nice that fair share, if fair share had any teeth, that means even if it's an as of right, if one district had too many shelters, we still couldn't make that conversion. We couldn't, when I say conversion, take this private zone, properly zoned, and turn it into like a public space. That would be good if we can control it, but I don't know. And are you and district manager, you're saying that previously under our other mayor, de Blasio,
Other administrations are not putting the blocks.
okay, other administrations,
There has been an emphasis that
like discretionary, they would still come and ask for permission.
for permission instead of forgiveness. Yes.
Okay.
And so in joining this, as we look at other communities like SCB, I think 11, where there's zero amount of shelters, there is a strong advocacy push by these boards in these areas to the elected officials that gives teeth to these areas.
That's I really want. I'm with
I
Whitney.
feel like we're saying it, but I just wanted to know.
Like, have you spoken to the DM there? And the DM
I
told you.
can share that information.
Yeah, because one, if you share it with us, we can see what model they're using. And I wanted, like, is Pelham richer than us?
Mm-hmm.
Certain parts.
Because I was like, Pelham's
Everyone
a-
is richer than us, bro.
Yes.
Like, we're the lowest
Fourth
congressional district in
yeah,
America.
but congressional district means it's a whole bunch of these CDs, including. So where's CD 11? What congressional district does it sit in?
I believe that's Congress member
Bowman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I want to say.
Because Ritchie is us and up towards Riverdale.
Okay.
And we still have the largest concentration of people below the poverty level.
Okay. So
I just also want to clarify that I think the fair share CB one, like, we should be creating a policy at least to be able to ask the same types of questions of all of the shelters that we do have discretionary or advising over. But it does seem like if it's as of right, what we are doing is really suggestive. So like there's going to be a different set of guidelines or things that we'll want to ask for things that are coming in as of right, then
the ones that
like
need
the community advisory board, for example, should definitely come with something that's coming as of right. We should ask that of them.
But another thing is, one thing I wanted to ask it, fair share, who is that? Who is that? Is that DHS? Is that the mayor's office?
Department of Social Services.
Oh, DSS.
Yes, that's why the letter is written from in reference
So D
speaking to whether or not they're using the needs assessment to determine which those with the fair share to determine that there is a need assessment because of overproliferation, homelessness in our district. The reason why the siting of shelters happen more here than anywhere else. I'm sure we could talk about there was folks losing their homes in CB 11, and folks who were becoming homeless who were living in those homes because some of those are more than one family home. They're two family homes. And I want to go back, Ms. Williams, if I can, to what I was saying about that. I believe that there. I mean, what would you attribute to the reason why CB 11 does not have?
I don't know, but I think it's presumptuous to say it's just because they have a more active community board. And I'm asking for some sort of indication or the proof that or evidence that it's because of advocacy from their community board that is preventing.
I'll get to the map because I mean even Riverdale, which for sure is the richest one, even got one. So they doing better than Riverdale. Their advocacy is better than Riverdale.
But
That's
what I'm
crazy.
saying. I don't know what I don't know what the reasoning is.
We can look at representation, electoral wise, or a lot of reasons why. I mean, it's not to say they don't have land or ability for possibilities of development.
And I think that's another thing. I think so. Here's the thing. I do want to say that I would love for DHS, and not just for like our committee, but I think as we have called a lot of important people to come and speak, I think we need to have someone from DHS come and speak, and to just kind of, for me, whenever I want to attack something, I always want to understand like just even what
The processes.
yeah, like what what he's saying. It's just like CD 11 has zero. Can you explain that? Someone needs to explain why CD 11 has zero. And Riverdale, which we know for sure is one of the richest areas in the city, it has one.
They might have an addiction center.
And then even the article, the article here,
trying to be helpful.
Yeah,
I get it.
There's an one of the articles here says Billionaire Row, one of their hotels wasn't doing good and they turned it into a shelter. The city bought it for a shelter. Like, I agree, one is still nothing compared to the rest of us who are holding like 20, 30, but zero?
An offensive newspaper column and unapologetic apology could lead to a rare shakedown of a Bronx community board. Bronx Community Board 11 members voted 20-7 on Thursday to move with a full vote on November 30th that would create a committee to consider demoting the vice chair, Albert D'Angelo, and chair, Bernadette Ferrara, based on a column demeaning Black people.
What?
That's what CB11. This
They're
is
racist?
November 20. Yes, this is November 2023.
According to the article.
Allegedly. So I'll drop the article in the document, but that's how CB11 moves. All we gotta do is Google it, bro.
But I don't know. I just feel like, so anyway, so so one outstanding questions. What is going on with CB11? Advocacy or whatnot. That's number one. Another outstanding request is, I think, at a community, like full board meeting, we should probably try to get DHS. I think this is an interesting topic for a lot of people. There we can ask some of our then, hold on, let me get to the shared document.
The column published in April argued that Black communities have only themselves to blame for largely failing to achieve the American dream, rather than American racism. Since, if that were true, how were the slaves freed? And how were Black Americans given the right to vote? And how did we elect a Black president? That's your boy from CB11. So
That's not my boy.
I mean, not your boy.
My question was, what do we know about their pieces on housing? So
I think the tone of the board is demonstrated by stuff like this, right?
But if it's by right, they don't even talk to them.
Right.
Because the only
but we're talking about why CB11 doesn't have any. If that's the kind of attitude and the way that this man speaks in a column, how is he speaking privately, and how is he handling the city and DHS and MOCJ and everybody when they come in like, we want to put a shelter in?
Yeah, but they don't. If it's as of right, they don't even come.
Well, I want to say this.
But I'm not even talking about as of right. We're talking about the last 20 years since like 1989. They have been able to not get a shelter.
Shit, but I'm saying here's the thing I'm saying. If our understanding is that we cannot even fight as of right, we had to invite them here because they don't even have to come here. Come here, meaning to the community board.
But I think that's irrelevant in the document that you want us to actually work on. As of right is going to be a totally, that's why I put it as a different entity, right?
Yes, and I said in my little make believe world, as of right should fall under some criteria.
Right, because I think
It should.
Yeah, and like in my make
I
believe, I understand it doesn't fall there, but in my make
Yeah.
believe, go ahead, district.
want to add that as of right doesn't mean that we should just not set
Oh, no, no,
standards,
no, no.
because this committee was created to hold accountable to elected officials. In my opinion, elected officials are in an agency accountable to the standard. If you are still even want to walk into here as a right or through a ULA process that will require our vote to say that you shouldn't even think about bringing in a facility here to our district unless you have these minimum standards that the board is requiring. And so what I say when I'm adding to this, or what I'm going to add to the thing is that I don't want us to lose our drive to say that as of right does that, because I think that whether it is as of right happens borough-wide, there are a lot of community boards that have very small amount of facilities as a right or either ULUP process, because it is that's their community board pushing back, saying if you don't have these basic minimum standards in play, you should not even consider it. Landlords should not even consider it, even renting. Private landlords should even consider renting to the city just to make a buck, because if these quote unquote agencies, whether it is agency Z or agency A, don't have the basic minimum standards, that have examples of basic minimum standards that we have in other communities. So for example, agency C has poor security or doesn't ensure that that folks are following curfew or whatever it is that we have in play. We should always have those basic standards for both. So I agree with you. Yes, they should fall to some criteria as a right versus anything else.
Okay, so number one, I do want to take it with the grain. I'm with Ms. Williams on this. I want to take a grain of salt with advocacy. I do want to say that we are going to become advocates as much as we can to push back. But the reason why, for example, hotel conversions, no shade to CB11, just no shade to them. If any place I'm going to put a hotel, I'm buying a hotel and putting it in the South Bronx. I'm not putting it anywhere else. The Yankee Stadium's right there. I'm putting it there. That is where I don't think we're going that far into the Bronx. So because we have hotels here that if are underutilized today, because just like Fortune said, we have a contract. We don't know how long that contract is, because once that landlord thinks I can get more money than Fortune, then I'm going to kick Fortune out and send it to the next bidder. Same thing with the hotels. It's a hotel, it's a Marriott today, and it's always going to be a Marriott. I'm going to give it to DHS today. But once more money comes into this district, I'm kicking everybody out and I'm using my hotel as intended. So I also think some of these things are just like developers saying, what should I use it in the meantime until the district becomes what I want it to become, and then use it for another means. So I think we have a lot of property that people want to buy cheap, sit on, get into a city contract, I suspect, for the interim, and as gentrification happens, we'll kick out this city agency because we know more money is coming into the district. I do believe, regardless of how poor CB1 may be today, I do think we are the beaming future of the Bronx, which is why most investments are happening. I understand there are shelters in the Bronx, but when I talk to people like Michael who are born in the Bronx, will tell me all the time, my building used to be a lot and now it is an apartment building. A lot of things used to be lots and now they're these fancy buildings. So I do want to, even though I do want to push back against too many shelters, there's a lot of high-end money that is also coming to CB1 in ways that are not coming to other districts. We have a lot of luxury, high-end, fancy buildings that are coming to our district.
But at the same time that this community board historically approved all of that luxury, they were historically approving the 30 whatever shelters we have.
Well, I want you to know there's a second article where Arlene Parks, and this is an article, it says Arlene Parks told Rafaela Salamanca that I did not approve this shelter.
Yeah.
I do not know who did this. So I do want to also advocate for even our former chair, who is very special and was like, I never approved something like this. That meeting never happened. I don't know what the city council person is lying about.
But I think I'm trying to get us to stop thinking about this one specific example, because if we're going to write up a policy, we need to write up a policy that's like going to defend us from this happening again, but like from future.
So here's the thing I want to ask the district manager: how did we know Fortune was coming if it's as of right?
So Fortune, we received a letter from Mark J.
So Mark J does, even though it's as of right, they do send us
They're
message.
required to communicate with us that this facility is coming into your district. So, and when they wrote us this letter, and they wanted to come to meet with me as a district manager, I said that this meeting needs to be taken up with the committee on Health and Human Services and with the board, because this project came with a lot of things that need to be informative to the board, what was bringing to what type of population was coming, and so on, because it didn't need to happen in a vacuum.
Okay, so
this is one of the reasons we made aware.
All right, so in the beginning, so here's what I hear. Current steps for Fair Share. Fair Share, that portion of this discussion is for legislative advocacy, and that is because they're violating step 2 and 3. We want to push not only DHS, we want to push City Council, who funds DHS, because it's a city policy that they need to comply with 2 and 3. We want to make recommendation that Fair Share, even when it is as of right, should be considered, and then in there we can outline what the other districts in the borough looks like and versus what our district looks like, and just to show that the failure of complying with Fair Share is having a disproportionate impact on the shelter placement. So that's just going to be like a 1-page letter, similar to.
So there's like a huge flaw in that when you look at the breakdown of the beds throughout the city. When we look at the letter from Mark J,
okay.
So the breakdown of the beds, we have 34,000, but Brooklyn and Queens both have 39,000.
Brooklyn and Queens Brooklyn's the number 1 populated borough, and then Queens is the second most populated borough. It's my understanding our population difference between Queens and the Bronx is 1 million people.
But there's 5,000 less beds here in the Bronx. So we can't argue that we're being like burdened with too many beds or like too many shelters if the bed count in the Bronx
Is that transitional or?
So it just says the following is a breakdown of residential care housing beds throughout New York City. By borough, 34,000 in the Bronx, Brooklyn 39, Manhattan 30, Queens 39, Staten Island 6,000. So like Staten Island has 1 shelter, but that 1 shelter has 6,000 beds.
I was gonna say I know Staten Island has shelters because I got clients there. What we are using for disproportionate impact, Ramona, is the CDs in our borough. So not necessarily, not Bronx versus Queens, but just CB1 versus Bronx Community Board 1 versus Bronx Community Board 8.
So I get that, but what I'm saying is like there's a flaw in that argument when we have less beds, right? So we might have more sites, but like it could be like this site. What's the address for this? Wales Avenue?
Yes, but what do you mean there's a flaw if I'm just talking about community boards in the Bronx versus community boards in the Bronx?
Because looking at the math, right? Highbridge has more beds than we do.
Yes, we're the 3rd.
So that's the thing. So not only are we having less beds total for the borough, but we don't have the most amount of sites for the borough either.
No, we're the 3rd.
So it's like we want to argue that we're being like am I making sense?
No. But here's the thing. I could advocate for community board 1, 5, and 6 are holding the brunt of the shelters when community board 8, 12, 11, 7 has almost half the size of what community board 5, 6, and 1 is holding.
But we don't have to be the worst.
No, we don't have to be the worst to advocate.
I'm just kind of saying like the numbers are not really supporting.
Yes, it is. Look at this
hypothesis.
Map. So what do you mean the numbers are not supporting?
I don't know if those numbers you're quoting in the letter are the numbers relating to just shelters versus specific population.
It just says supportive breakdown of residential care.
Yeah.
Housing beds, right? So like in the Bronx, you have CD4 with 35, then you have CD, what is that at top of it? 5 with 29, and then we're down at 22. But then CD6 has 21.
Right, so that may be article. So what you're reading is DHS shelters, but the letter is talking about is probably Article 9, which is a sector of the population that are in need of
Supportive housing.
Supportive
But I
housing,
thought
right.
this
No,
whole
that's
letter
talking
from
about
Mock J
beds.
was just focusing on
Article 9.
residential care. Yeah.
No, Article 9 only, but you're reading with that the map is all shelters that are non HIPAA protected. That letter you're reading from RJ is Article 9, which is a certain sector of the population.
So this is a smaller sector than what we're seeing here, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Okay. So again, like I just feel like if we're arguing that this is an unfair burden on CD1, the counts of shelters in the district don't support that because we are not the most burdened in the
No,
Bronx.
we don't have to be the most burdened. So in my world, CD4, for example, which has 26, wouldn't get any more. Well, which has more than 26, but let me
They
just
have
use the blue.
35.
Yeah, I'm just using the blue for right now because I'm not doing math right now. CD4, which has 26, would be at cap because CD10 has only 3. You see what I mean? This is what I mean. That doesn't make sense because you're not doing fair
I agree
share.
with that argument, but I'm saying CD4 then needs to be making this argument
No.
about burden. If we're going to focus on CD1, this is what I'm saying. Like maybe we need to detach ourselves from this specific site because to debate against this specific site.
No, but nowhere in our letter do I need to articulate that we are the worst burden. I'm just going to say the fair share didn't happen because it is like the inequities within the district. CB1 is
But
not.
we said that this didn't need to have fair share because it's as of right.
Well,
Right?
Yeah,
When you
We're- I
describe
think
as of right.
We're conflating some different issues. So I think what Delorney is talking about is writing a broader advocacy letter to the city, asking them to consider fair share more moving forward, not necessarily in response to the specific site.
I thought that's what we were doing.
Oh no, this is just
It's
like
a
fair
broader
share.
advocacy letter to move forward.
Exactly.
To consider fair share, and to communicate, I think, more proactively with us moving to, so we can also see how 2 and 3 are being, those other 2 pieces that you pulled out are being implemented.
Yeah, because I think that's the only where for a larger advocacy push, that's where fair share fits in a larger advocacy push. Because you guys are doing number 1, but no one's doing number 2 or 3, and the failure of doing 2 or 3 is causing like the Bronx to be all clunky. You know what I mean?
So it's like a really more in-depth letter that CB6 did, talking about that certain steps are not followed.
Right.
In that place.
Because that to me is where fair share fits, is in a larger advocacy push, whereas recommendation and requirements, which is like a more specific, and then like Whitney says there's 2 recommendation and requirements, one for as of right and one for.
Well, I guess it can mostly be the same, but I think to your point, like what we've learned from this as of right experience with Fortune Society is just that we need to have recommendations for
Like a guidance, yeah.
a guidance for when folks come and ask us these questions about shelter.
I like to call 311 calls, 311 complaints. Is that what they're called, Dion?
Yes.
I like that question. I got it. So when we do our liquor license,
Right.
the police comes and gives us 311 complaints for businesses. And so some of these, so DHS is, just contracts it to third-party entities, Fortune being one, Osborne being other ones, right? So a lot of these third-party entities already own shelters and already manage shelters. So if we can get 311 complaints about what they're doing with their other facilities, can just show us what we should think. Because I didn't really like, they're saying they're going to be like 168 beds, but only like 6 people working a shift. That doesn't feel like that's a good proportion to me. I don't know what I think an ideal proportion is, but it just felt like there's too many people and not enough hands on deck. At least that's what I think. But I just want to throw through, 311 complaints are a really good understanding to see what the community that have had some of these service providers before have been dealing with. So yes, okay. So anyway, so now we're at part 2, which is just like recommendations of, I really loved, we asked for job, and they were very employment was really good. They did agree to that. Fortune did agree that they would give us employment.
See?
They did job.
Right.
This is part of closed records.
I was like Mark J. I was like that might be Mark J money. Oh, this is Mark J money.
This is part of the closed Rikers plan. It was part of the realization that closed Rikers required a certain amount of beds in each borough, which means that it should have gone to the neighborhood advisory council for closed Rikers.
I just emailed those people. They didn't even get back to me. But number two, I
Who
want
did
to
you
say,
email that?
I'll tell you later. But can you? I don't know, Whitney. Whitney, who work criminal law, I've never had a client not be able to be released because they didn't have housing out of Rikers.
Yeah,
I've had them upstate, but not Rikers.
That's what the judges are telling Freedom Agenda. The last time we testified, they had actual numbers on like how many people were still being held because they don't have a bed to return to. So it could be someone that lives in public housing.
Oh, because they can't be released.
So the right to return for public housing hasn't really been.
You can do probation from Rikers, right? Is probation not going to release you if you don't have an address?
You have to have an address for probation, yeah.
And it can't be just straight up DHS?
It can be DHS. You can also.
Maybe because
you don't need a permanent address. You need an address.
And probably the fear that they're going to return back to the system of it being
that's
a
the
shelter.
system, though, right? Like
services.
the Department of Probation doesn't care about that. Doesn't care about recidivism.
I mean, they definitely don't. Okay, so here's the thing. Because I was like, I've never had a client not be released.
You totally like threw me off my entire and I don't even know what you were talking about right now because I was like, what? You lost me. You said something about Maria or I don't know what I heard.
No, I was just saying release. I've never had a client at Rikers upstate. All my clients get.
No, yeah. I mean, I have the email where like the organizers from there had the statistics. It's like 1 in 4. So it's folks that either don't have a safe site to return or the judge feels that if they return to where they can return, they will fall into recidivism. Yeah, this came out in a hearing in like the fall.
We're gonna Google this, but we believe it. We want people to be released.
It was like in the fall.
We love Fortune. I told Fortune we love Fortune. We want people to be released. I do want to say that one of your questions, Ramona, in regards to is it going to be people from Mont Haven? They told us they could not control. Clarissa asked that, and they said they could not control that.
They can control that because that's how the borough-based jails are going to get filled. It has to be filled by people from our borough. So Mock J.
One of the reasons why was because people had to get closer to visit.
Exactly. So like,
no, we totally understand. But DM, you were there. Asked the question. He said he could not do that. Clarissa asked it first. So I totally am a big fan of that, and I agree with you. Our shelter should be used for our people.
And what is this thing called? Supportive housing?
It's transitional housing.
Transitional housing site.
It was a transitional housing site.
So
I'm trying to separate like recommendations for like a larger policy versus like the feedback on Mock J for this.
So you said there was 100. So does anybody have a feel about like 168 beds and how many staff they should have at all times? Any feelings on this? Did I just make that up?
No, it's like 160 something, and they have like the staff numbers.
They're also quoted in the Mock J. I emailed you the Mock J letter.
Oh, good. Thank you. Sure. I hope you emailed the right one.
Yes, I did.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Bam.
Okay, let me open it for y'all. I'll email it to you.
I wanted to talk about Chair. I wanted to reiterate that you are going to find if we use 311 as a amount to feed us the historic 311 concerns around where shelter sightings are and uptick in quality of life issues. There is going to be uptick throughout the district associated quality of life issues associated to the siting of a shelter in the community, because the average is they're gonna determine that these issues were not here until the shelter was sited in the area. Like, for example, car break-ins, robberies, interactions with people with mental health issues, et cetera, in certain communities that did not have, like these contracting agencies don't come into the community without standards. They have a cookie cutter way of providing services, and those standards to say, like, for example, 190 this is separate from the transitional housing program, but 198 beds of folks with mental health issues, which was going to lead to the Jericho project, where the security was only concentrated in the building, but not of the village.
Okay, can you just please delineate what is the Jericho project?
The Jericho project is a project that talks about
Oh, the church.
The church here with a.
It's already up? And working?
No, the groundbreaking is going on now. They are constructing it now.
Okay. So also, can you just say out loud what you just showed me, Ramona?
I think she has something too. Do you want to say something on the letter?
Go ahead. Whatever you say.
So the recommended providers are expected to keep a minimum staff to resident ratio within the range of 1 to 20 or 1 to 30. So we can check like how many they actually put in there.
This says that they'll have 12 residential aides. There's 6 case managers, but 12 residential aides will be on staff.
Yes, 12.
So
12
168 divided by 12. That's 14 people. That's less than the standard ratio.
That's standard.
The other thing that I was just going to say is that, so closed Rikers, this is transitional housing for when people are done with their sentence, right? So it's not like in lieu of a sentence. It's when people have finished their sentence and need a place to stay as they re-enter. I don't know if the closed Rikers funding for some of these other projects, if they're ATI programs.
What's ATI?
Or sorry, alternatives to
To
incarceration.
incarceration.
Oh,
Right, so this says residents, they may be engaged in that program or supervise release or reentry services, but it's not, they don't have to be.
Oh, supervised release makes sense for this though, but they don't
Supervised
have
release does
make sense for this. That does make sense for
It's only
this.
transitional. It's not
Well,
you have longer.
Well, they're saying they're going to use it for all of these things.
Right, so like they might be receiving some mock J funding that comes from closed
Yeah.
Rikers funding, but it's not a closed Rikers project. I'm just trying to understand
'Cause-
why they have been able to avoid the neighborhood council, because if they're not.
Because you told me the 2 closed Riker sites are going to be really close to the jail.
it's supposed to be one by the school and one at the jail on the same block facing the back.
Is that the Win residential? Is the one by in the Diego Beatman
Yeah,
area?
yeah.
And I do know, because I did ask them, they would be able to take clients coming from upstate, because those clients really be locked up there. So they did also say they'd be able to take clients from up there. Okay, so let's go back to this.
Wait, what were you saying earlier about? What was the point that you were making?
I said that if we use 311 complaints as a margin or as a
Measurement.
as part of rubric to be able to determine whether or not these sightings are performing well or being good neighbors, is to say that you're going to see an uptick in 311 complaints in areas where shelters for single adults are associated with quality of life issues, like especially car break-ins or vandalism, et cetera. I'm saying that because that is factual, and we have data that relates to that.
Well, we're going to see it.
We can ask for the data.
Yeah, we
or
can
as
ask
part
for
of the guidelines.
Yes.
then.
Yeah, because I want to see what's the girl who does young adults? Stephanie said her car got broken into, and the shelter hasn't even got there. They're already breaking into her neighborhood.
There is
But that's not shelter
that's
people.
not shelter, that's
Those
Yeah.
are
addicts in the park.
that's addicts, yeah.
In the park that she's
So I
having.
think we have to divide the two. Like people that come out and are participating in this kind of programming don't really, one, they have a curfew.
Mhm.
2, if you're picked for a program like this, then you know that failing out is going to make things worse for you. So they're not going to go around busting out windows. I think all of that stuff that we're seeing in the
These are all
community,
separate, right, things.
it's
Yeah.
all
They're
separate stuff.
And I
separate
think-
housing.
And I think they're also getting complained. They really wanted to explain to us. And I don't know all the different type of housing. That's something I think I need to get informed of. But Fortune is programming. You have to do programming. He said it's not a drop house.
Right.
So there's a lot of programming. I said we know there's a lot of drug usage around the park in that area. You know, people are re-entering, they can be susceptible. He said that they do drug tests. Some of those drug tests can be random. So I say that because when we think about if we're going to get shelters, what type of shelters, we definitely want shelters that have programming with them, that are like
Supportive.
curfew. Yeah, that have curfews, because transitional housing is not supportive housing. These people are not considered like with a diagnosis of or anything, but they still have to do programming to re-enter into society. I also like the fact that it's 6 to 12 months, because that means they're trying to get out. They also said everybody got an extra bed, so they don't get too comfortable in a solo room. Like, so you're living next to someone. So I think maybe the requirements for future is like, what are your transitioning programming? Because it's supportive housing. You're supposed to stay there forever.
So
And
some
some
support,
SROs.
some supportive housing, or like the one at Jericho Project, is permanent.
Oh, okay.
Most supportive housing is permanent. So that's like when you talk about different classifications. So the 311 complaints, to the whole team, is you're going to hear temporary housing, or that necessary, or not temporary. I'm sorry, temporary. Yeah, temporary housing or housing temporary without curfew. That's the issue where you're going to have 311 upticks. Transitional housing, like the Jericho Project, which has a curfew and has programming, usually that not have that experience. Supportive housing is if you are like you and all of us here are tenants in our own apartment building, and that's permanent housing. You sign a lease, you are a tenant, and they do not have a curfew. But in supportive housing, there could be there's a population of various different needs, from mental health to domestic violence to various different issues. And support traditional housing specifically only deals with uh, substance abuse, along with other issues relating to incarceration and so on. So when I spoke to about the 311 complaints that everyone is suggesting we have statistics about, it is usually about the shelter housing that's dealing with single adults that we have. The office has received numerous amount of complaints about.
Which ones?
311. Specifically, there's a shelter on the Bruckner part of our district, in the Melrose part of our district, that is particular to car break-ins and vandalism, to store property that does not have a gate, that is to totally iron gate that blocks people from having interest. That has been like eradicated issues that's been happening repeatedly, that we have been. So we had to have a community meeting recently that I attended with NYPD, with folks who have been concerned about the uptick of quality of life issues after the sighting. Now that could be that not necessarily again saying that people come from the shelter or anything else. I'm just saying that you're gonna that do more complaints are going to be higher in certain parts of the district where those sightings are.
So there was a permit filed for this project in 2016.
For that building.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, pause. Which project, you guys?
There was a permit
Fortune?
filed.
Yes.
Let me put the link in the document. I know I'm trying to get away from this specific project, but I keep finding stuff.
Well, because I think that was supposed to be my understanding was supposed to be a permanent housing facility before it was cited for Fortune.
The developer Stefano filed new building applications for 7 stories of supportive housing and retail at 536 Wells Avenue. The 70-foot tall building is going to hold 61 units, which is the same thing that they're using. And then it has 2,300 square feet of retail and supposedly a 17-car garage, although this letter says that there's parking on the street. This is 2016.
Oh, so that's what they started, and I guess it didn't work out for them. Because there's no retail space in this one.
So then I think that what we need to do, I can't find a current picture of the building.
New building. Oh, didn't we ask for a tour of it?
Yes.
We always ask for the tour stuff. We never take.
So I'm wondering what we need to ask is
whether or not Fortune was going to be the contractor at the time.
It said that there wasn't a contractor picked out yet, but this is 2016. So since 2016,
they had the site ready for it.
The site was going to be used for something like this.
Mm-hmm. It was always
going to be used for something like this.
So who approved the building application? When this guy filed the building application, scroll down. When he filed the application in 2016, who approved that building application?
It's not a city. It's not a city. It would not be us. It's not the community board.
But if you're building,
Department of
Buildings for housing.
Yeah. Housing. But he said,
but this is supportive housing. That's what the permit was for.
How can you build something for supportive housing and retail? Because retail we know is private.
And not have a contractor in place.
This is
because
very
you
conf-
assume that you're going to find a nonprofit to take it.
So take it.
So again, the question that I have is,
Oh, this is
when
interesting.
Stefano did this back in 2016, who had to approve his building application?
Department of Buildings, is my understanding.
So then the Department of Buildings, so the Department of Buildings,
This is
I don't know
so-
how you're going to have to rewrite this, should not approve applications for, what was it called? Assisted supportive housing,
That's what it says. Mhm.
mixed use, without
Notification to the community board.
community board and borough president notification, without notifying. Because that's when you lost the fight.
Because it got approved right there.
Yes.
Mhm.
So
And
back
so-
in 2016, it was over.
And this is a big question. So we also learned from this article is that private developers can build supportive housing
Wait,
and without any permission.
And wait for a manager.
But what we do know is that they have to say it's supportive housing. If they have to say it's supportive housing, that should trigger DOB and trigger everybody else it should trigger.
Right.
Because he could have wrote 7-story residential,
right.
but he put supportive housing.
Can you
Mhm.
find the actual Department of Buildings permit or the application?
Let's see.
Oh, this is fascinating.
This is why people don't cheat on me. Because I'd be like, back in 2017,
It's unclear.
you were in a different
which-
relationship, but
Go down with the rest of the article.
Okay, I got you. Sorry, I forgot I controlled that. But laundry room.
I hate YIMBY.
This is very interesting.
It's probably how they justified the loan
Because the building's already there.
with the Northeast Community Bank. Support housing.
What
Would it be in the
guaranteed money.
construction?
What did the close Rikers project get approved? So he's thinking that if he's thinking that he's gonna get that, I mean, like, would you be thinking that that fund is gonna come down because the close Rikers project?
I mean, he would have had insider information,
You get what I'm saying? Like you sitting.
but that was 2019. So he
Right.
did this before that.
Right. So then it's not associated with that. Right?
Mm-mm.
It's waiting.
But we don't know who this person is. This is probably somebody's government.
Is this where I would go on the New York City construction dashboard? Is that where it's gonna let me look at the permit?
No, you have to go to the DOB and it's gonna say something about permit now, something like that. That's my understanding.
Here, approved permits. Okay.
This is so crazy. I mean, this is a problem. So it's like now I feel like I wonder how easy it is to search DOB. We have to like search. Can you search supportive housing? Put our
I
zip
think you
code.
can search by the address.
All right. So let me see.
This is crazy.
What?
There be some recent changes in learning from there. So,
Yeah, this is a weird website.
Okay,
this
so
is Black and Loud.
it's 7:30, you guys. All right. This was a very informative meeting. I think this is continued conversation though, but we did start. This is what always happens, but I only like talking here because I can include.
All right. So
Because it's
let
gonna
me
be-
look it up just by.
Hold on, let me go- okay.
Avenue.
Let me just finish this, you guys. Okay. One, let me just right now while you're searching, Ramon, I'm gonna go to old business. I do want to start off by the rent stabilization commercial space update. Can you just please provide that, district manager?
Sure. Oh, there is no update. She's just still stalled.
They don't know that because
Oh,
you just
okay.
told the executive board.
Oh, did I? I'm
Yes.
sorry, Katie. So the council member who authored this legislation has asked that we not engage because she's going to table this legislation because there are some legal issues related to whether or not this legislation can have multiple legal challenges, given the fact of whether or not legally under state law, whether there could be similar rent stabilization law can be passed by a local municipality entity. So she asked that we table this before we do any more advocacy or research on this issue.
This is TOPA.
No. So I forgot to tell you guys weren't at last meeting. Last meeting, Emmanuel and Moore were here. We talked about 2 bills that we wanted to support, and one of them was rent stabilization for commercial space. So therefore, small businesses as neighborhoods gentrify, they wouldn't be kicked out. Diana Ayala was a huge advocate of it and actually introduced the bill a few years ago, but yet the bill had never been passed. We thought it was a good time to put some pressure behind her. Also, her term's coming to an end, to advocate for the bill to be pushed. It's also really good during City of Yes economic development, but it's my understanding from the district manager that it's going to have some legal issues. So right now it's in the law department to see if a bill were to pass, if it can pass legal muster. So therefore we're going to table that. Then comes TOPA. Maura really wanted us to advocate around TOPA. I shared the article. TOPA is a Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act. It would allow tenants who have really bad landlords. I don't think this happens as much, but it's still happening somewhere in places in the Bronx where you have really, really bad landlords. And rather than this building going bankrupt or somebody else buying the building, tenants would get first picked of buying their apartment building. There was some protests around that. Actually, this was recent. This was a month ago. Yeah, it was a month ago. And this is some advocacy we want to do in support of TOPA. It is a pending bill in Albany.
Yep.
It's a pending bill in Albany. It's something we want to support. I just wanted to bring it up to the larger group about writing a letter in support for TOPA. That I am not going to be at Thursday's meeting, but that is something that we could probably create for May, because we're off in June. Is June? What's our July and August. So it'd be nice if we could have a letter in support for TOPA for our May meeting, so people can vote on it, and then we can send it out to our state senator and assembly person that we support TOPA and all the good stuff, and it seems to be hot in the Bronx. So that's TOPA.
What were the issues around TOPA?
There was no issues. There were some
You
issues.
said that there was like a protest or something?
Oh no, they were just there's this building in the Bronx. They were protesting their landlord, and the tenants were just advocating that we,
okay.
this is a perfect example where the tenants could be owners.
This is the building where this is not the building, but the same landlord who owns this building is the same landlord who owns the building where half of the building collapsed.
That corner?
David Kleiner.
Yeah, so it's supposed to be like a horror, like Draculord.
So there's also talk of we have enough public housing units that we could absorb units. So that's also something that the board should
What do you
think
mean
about.
we can absorb units? Tell me.
So the Faircloth limit for public housing.
What is Faircloth?
Faircloth was this like the law that was passed in 97 or 8 that states that whatever you had of public housing in 99, that is the maximum that you can have ever. So it was a way to stop public housing from getting built and funded.
We have 174,000 units.
So there's an allowance for the state, right? So the state, let's say that the state can have 200 public housing units, right? So that means 200,000. So that means that there's 4,000 units that the housing authority could absorb. So a building like this could look at tenant ownership, but it could also look at becoming an arm of public housing. So then they would have the rent locked to their income. They would have the same
30%.
benefits and preferences as public housing, and then access to like the services and the
Can you spell that?
Faircloth? Yeah. Let me look it up.
Is that federal law?
Yeah, so that was a federal amendment to the housing. Faircloth is FAIRCLOTH.
And examples in other states where it's happening?
Yeah.
I mean, nationally now people are starting to talk about, finding ways to make housing affordable. And they're all facing the issue that in order to make it affordable, it has to be public or subsidized.
So I'm going to say section. Girl, I'm about to say section. Federal. Let me just put the word
Section 9.
Yeah,
I was
it
gonna-
came up.
Yeah,
Oh,
Faircloth
sorry.
Act right there.
federal. Oh, okay. Act.
How do you justify
Oh, it's
taking the
one word.
property
It's a
away from the
compound
landlord?
word. Okay,
Yeah, it's
so-
his last name. It's a congressman.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you.
How do you justify taking the property away from the landlord? Does the state?
So the
So it would have to be like a
It's a
process
TOPA.
of like,
Yeah.
it's a TOPA, but it would be towards Section 9.
So the number one thing is that you would need a bad landlord, someone who's obviously bad, not only someone who's at risk of losing the property.
Yeah, missing liability.
Yes.
Very clear liability.
Very
Yeah.
clear liability. And then right now under TOPA, the tenants would have their first pick at purchasing the unit. And I think we have histories of that in the 90s where we've seen bad landlords and the city, instead of becoming a landlord, sells it to the tenants for $1, whatever the number may be. I think someone brought up a very big question is like, even when you sell it to the tenants, who is paying for those repairs?
Exactly. And that's why the ownership is a problem for tenants.
So and then I want to say in regards to Faircloth, is that we know city, states, and federal government does not want to be landlords, and that's why we have this huge privatization of NYCHA issue. Because
so they don't want to be a landlord, but if the tenants take it on, right? If you take on a slum building,
yeah, which is what we're saying there.
And they're the ones that purchase it. It's the same issue with like resident management of public housing.
Yeah.
So the tenant is then the tenant then becomes responsible for the repairs, right, as a board. And how many of the tenants in that building are going to be able to get financing and loans and things like that?
I think okay. So I like to end my meetings with actionable items. I would like someone to take on the fact that I want us to support TOPA, but I think if we know TOPA is a result of a slum landlord, the question is, when the tenants pick up this property, who's paying for the repairs?
It's the group that the tenant creates.
And so it would be hard for you to own for the first time and then be saddled with huge construction loans. So I think if we are advocating for TOPA, I don't know what provisions does it have where the state and city can kind of help with some of those repairs so everybody can be at equal footing, you know what I mean? And if it doesn't, that's something we need to advocate, that the statute needs to have that extra robust protection.
I mean, there is AEP. There is AEP, the Alternative Enforcement Program, where a building could fall under this particular program led by HPD, based off of the mere fact that like there's just a host of like
slum landlord issues,
like just violations that tenants have reported to 311. And on that criteria, like they could say, okay, well, the city's gonna like do these emergency repairs, but we're gonna like find the landlord.
So you're saying the city will do emergency repairs and sell to the tenants?
Find the landlord.
Find the landlord for the money.
Well, listen, I know what the current is, but right now it's my understanding with these slum landlords, the fines are not scaring them.
Yeah, they're not paying.
So, I mean, because we want to support TOPA, right? We want to support this ability for tenants. I think all of us as a community board support ownership, and like if people can afford it, obviously. And so if there's means of if the city already has a way of doing emergency repairs and fining, that means if you're going to support, if we're pushing TOPA, there's a way to do emergency repairs and sell to tenants. You know what I mean? Because I didn't know the city was doing emergency repairs for anybody. So if they're doing emergency repairs for private landlords and just fining them as a result of already doing the repairs,
or incarcerating them too. No, yeah, it's another path to like, because they won't pay the fine, so they incarcerate them.
Oh, like someone who don't pay their child support? Okay,
Yeah.
I see the link.
There was an example recently that a judge,
I wasn't making a joke.
judge incarcerating a landlord for having an enormous amount of
Yeah.
violations in play, and fined them until they made repairs as part of his release.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that is like a child support. Okay, so Whitney says she's going to look into this TOPA stuff. We'll start a new Google Doc. Emmanuel, you have a lot of tenant stuff in your head, so we'll work on it in the May meeting and do some edits to our letter. We'll add stuff, and then we can see if it'd be ready for consideration for the full board vote and things like that. But we also have June before they go out. So then I wanted to say another thing this is for Whitney and I. Whitney, you and I need to spend some time and finish editing this document one day with our district manager.
Bylaws.
Yes, bylaws, sorry. We
reported 2 months ago, right?
Yeah, so one day Whitney and I need to and district manager needs to gang the bylaws. I will share the document with you guys. We've already started. It looks like the last time I made any edits to this was in February 15th with district manager and Whitney. We made really far, but I think if Whitney, the district manager, and I do a quick finishing of the document, then we can all discuss the edits as a committee.
Pass her the laptop. I found that on the question you have, but I don't know. I mean, I think it's just like certain jobs.
Oh, okay. So Whitney, we can talk offline about when we're going to do this. All right. And then I think so What will happen at our next meeting, you guys? I really would love to finish 2 letters by June. One is our letter in support for TOPA, and then the second thing I would love us first to finish is our recommendations for DHS. Okay, so the advocacy letter and our like criteria and policy. That would be a good year for bylaws and legislation if we can finish those 3 tasks. Okay.
Let's say those 3 things again.
1, we're gonna write a letter in support for TOPA. 2, we are going to write a general advocacy letter about fair share, just like a general one about like, what are you guys doing? You guys are violating your own rules. And then the third thing is the policy or criteria we want for shelters coming here. Obviously, we're going to need to do a little 2-step. One is for by right and one that needs board approval. So if we do that, we would be fine. Anything else the community board needs, we'll have to wait until our next term because we cannot take on any more. So is there any other issues, things that you want us to discuss, policies that even if we don't get to by June, things we should think about going forward? You know how long it takes to pass anything in the state, so. Oh yeah, sorry.
So this one, FYI, the Corporation for Supportive Housing will be meeting on Monday with the committee supportive housing. I know that last time.
Oh, that's Monday.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's this Monday. If folks who are interested, because we also wanted this conversation going together with what we've been talking about looking at different models of supportive housing as it relates to national. The Corporation for Supportive Housing is a national organization that helps support organizations to provide supportive housing and programming throughout the entire country. Danny Barber, who's the committee chair, asked that we come in to talk about supportive housing 101 and how we look at models, as you talked about, where we are going to set standards or models of supportive housing for people who are going to come to us in the future about citing supportive housing or shelters in our district. It'll be best for folks who want to come and learn more about that to come on Monday at 6 o'clock here in the room to discuss.
Oh, this is perfect. Is there anything special happening on Thursday at Thursday's meeting?
The only thing that you mean voting items?
Yeah.
We are voting on the liquor license one visual, and I believe there's no other voting item.
And no presentation?
And no other presentation.
Okay.
Oh, the Department of Sanitation with Chief is now going to be extra part as because folks have been concerned about how we are looking at our district as far as cleanliness in a district and looking at those. And so I look at it as a mental health aspect to public safety to other things. Thank you, Ms. Williams, to talk about how we look at sanitation. So that was a good thing because when you brought that up, I think in a previous meeting about how you feel about your community or yourself mentally is how clean or not is your community. And I didn't look at it that way, and so she opened my eyes into looking at that in a way that says how you feel is what you see when you come out in the community. So how the sanitation department is doing that and how we hold them accountable.
I didn't see the older ones.
How we hold sanitation accountable. So that's going to come as part of the community.
All right, so there's going to be notes taken, minutes from this meeting. I am not at our board meeting. Whitney, do you want to do a summary? You just want to read that? Do we need someone to read it? Or do you, okay, we do need someone.
Vice chair, you don't have a vice chair or secretary.
Yeah, so Whitney, you can read the minutes from this. You can figure it out. Nothing but an arraignment. But so, so you can do that. I will be at Monday's meeting to continue the conversation. That's great that you told me that. I was going there anyways. So I'll be at the supportive housing meeting. Okay, anything else before we adjourn? Also, Ramona, what did you find about the license?
Oh, so we were looking at it. What came up in the results is just like larger, like capital repairs. The initial permit, the first one is for like facade, but I don't see anything.
So is the existing building that was done over? Not a new structure for that?
I think it is new though, because when you look at the pictures on Google,
It's just a lot.
it was a lot before. So it's like, but this is only going back to 2021. So I don't see but I'm also like not experienced with this website.
So we'll do a deeper dive and I'll share with the committee whether there's something about the permitting that's available.
Okay, so we're going to continue to do research on this housing thing. I'm happy that we're going to have to we'll be at the supportive housing meeting On Monday, I sit on that committee with that Danny chairs. So the more information we know, I think the better it's going to be for our guidelines, because there's a lot we don't know. So we, hopefully we're informed enough by June to have something working for the larger board to discuss. Okay, the meeting is adjourned.
Yeah. Thank you.
Shout out to these people who do laws. This is a lot of work. Oh my god. They have to all have research teams, don't they? Absolutely. Like, this is crazy.